Night doesn't arrive abruptly here. It seeps in, cool and deliberate, like ink spreading across papyrus. You find yourself in a narrow alley behind a workshop, where the day's heat finally loosens its grip. Oil lamps bloom one by one, their flames cupped by hands practiced enough to avoid singed eyebrows. This is the hour when inventors wake up, or rather, when they stop pretending they ever slept. You step inside a low room smelling of clay, beeswax, and damp stone. A tangle of shadows clings to the walls. In the center, a work table waits beneath a lamp, crowded with bowls, cords, reeds, and jars punctured with holes of varying stubbornness. Water ticks somewhere, soft, patient, relentless. You're among tinkerers now, people who refuse to let night steal their schedule. A man with ink-stained fingers greets you with a nod. "We make time behave," he says, which is a bold claim for anyone, let alone someone adjusting a leaky pot with a bit of linen. He gestures to a clepsydra perched carefully on a stand. Its drip is steady tonight. Too steady, he suspects. He taps the base, listening like a doctor to a chest. Nearby, a woman trims a candle with a small knife, shaving wax into curls. She measures the length with a cord, then marks it with faint notches. Each notch, she explains, equals a segment of night. When the flame reaches a line, someone should be awake. Candle clocks aren't new, but pairing them with water clocks. Now, that's the innovation. You watch them test the system. The candle burns. The water drips. They compare. They argue. Someone says the candle runs fast when the air is dry. Someone else insists water lies when it's cold. A third proposes adding salt to the jar, which earns a collective groan. It makes everything worse. Everyone knows that. Someone still suggests it every time. This is how progress looks. Not grand declarations, but mild disagreements under flickering light. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal devices were driven more by temple needs or by civic life. Guards, bakers, physicians. But here in this room, the motivation feels personal. People want to wake up on time without staring at stars all night. They want an alarm that whispers instead of shouts. They want sleep that isn't interrupted by anxiety. A younger tinkerer demonstrates a clever trick. He's rigged a small float inside the receiving bowl of a water clock, attached by string to a tiny bronze chime. When the water reaches a certain level, the float lifts, the string tightens, and ting, a soft sound rings. Not enough to wake a neighborhood, enough to wake one person who already half expected it. You smile. It's delicate, it's fussy, it will absolutely fail if a cat bumps the table. But when it works, it's beautiful. They test it again. Drip, drip. The candle flame trembles. The room holds its breath. Ting. Everyone nods, satisfied. Someone allows themselves a grin. Someone else immediately starts recalibrating, because satisfaction never lasts long here. A mainstream fact floats up amid the tinkering. Egyptian water clocks varied widely in design, with different shapes and markings tailored to latitude and season. These inventors know it intuitively. One points out that tonight's test will be wrong by winter. Another says that's why you make 2 sets of marks. A third says that's why you never trust one device alone. Redundancy is ancient. The woman with the candle mentions a quirky tidbit. Some households prefer scented wax, not for luxury, but because different resins burn at slightly different rates. Also, she adds, it smells nicer than panic. Fair. They invite you to step outside to see the moon. It hangs low and silver, a quiet supervisor. Moonlight matters here. Candles burn differently under it. Water behaves differently too. At least everyone insists it does. You can't help but notice how often the moon gets blamed when things go wrong. Overslept? Blame the moon. Alarm late? Definitely the moon. Historians still argue whether lunar phases truly affected clock accuracy or whether humans simply needed something poetic to accuse. The moon, dignified, accepts all charges. Back inside, the inventors prepare a night-long test. One will nap. Another will stay awake. They'll switch at the first alarm. The goal is consistency. The reality is laughter when someone snores through a chime that would wake a sparrow. A joke lands softly. We need an alarm for the alarm. Groans follow. Someone writes it down anyway. You sit on a low stool listening to the rhythm. Drip, flame, breath. The cadence is hypnotic. You understand why temples sound like this at night, why the water clock's heartbeat feels comforting. Time here doesn't attack, it accompanies. A man tells you about a failure that taught them something important. Once, a candle guttered early because of a draft, ringing the chime too soon. The guard woke an hour early and relieved his partner, who went home confused but grateful. The city didn't collapse. In the morning, they laughed. Precision, it turns out, has wiggle room. They refine the device anyway. Adjust the hole. Shorten the wick. Add a shield for drafts. The room grows quieter as midnight approaches. Focus deepens. This is the hour when cleverness is most awake. Another mainstream fact surfaces. Timekeeping at night enabled more than ritual. It supported medicine. Physicians needed to track intervals between treatments. One inventor mentions timing poultices and drinks. If the candle reaches the third notch, he says, change it. Someone mutters that patients never sleep through the third notch. Laughter again. You catch a fringe tidbit whispered conspiratorially, a rumor of a clock that tips water onto a sleeper's face. Effective, someone says. Unpopular. They all nod. The design does not survive peer review. Historians still argue whether such face splash alarms were common or merely jokes passed along by apprentices. You hope it's the latter. You also know better than to bet against human ingenuity. As the night thins toward its quietest point, the devices settle into their work. The chime rings. Someone wakes gently. Someone else takes notes. The candle burns down to its last mark, obedient and small. Outside, the moon shifts almost imperceptibly, as if approving the effort. You realize what's being perfected here isn't just accuracy, it's trust. Trust that you can sleep and still arrive when needed. Trust that time will keep its promise if you treat it carefully. A final test completes. The alarm rings within a breath of expectation. No cheering, just satisfied nods. The inventors clean up, already thinking of improvements. Tomorrow night, they'll try again. That's how nights like this work. You step back into the alley as dawn hints at the horizon. The last thing you hear behind you is water. Still dripping, still counting. Somewhere nearby, someone will wake on time because of this quiet stubbornness. You yawn, smiling. Even inventors need alarms. Word